Imagine money is depreciating every day while real value is only increasing. Why do some people lose everything during a crisis while others become wealthier? I myself once woke up at rock bottom when inflation devoured my last dollars. That was when I discovered the main secret of financial resilience. And closer to the end, I will share a practice that can protect your money even in the stormiest year. Don't miss out and subscribe if you want to know how to win in times of uncertainty. Have you ever woken up at night with an uneasy feeling that something in the world is becoming more and more uncertain? Maybe you recently looked at your savings and thought, what if those numbers lose their meaning tomorrow? I know that feeling all too well. There was a time when I would count the coins in my pocket every morning, and prices in the store were rising faster than I could even understand what was happening to the dollar. Let me be honest with you, inflation, economic storms, market instability, these aren't just news stories on a screen. These are things that enter your home without knocking, sit down at your table, and force each of us to reconsider what truly has value. We're used to thinking in terms of money. How much is in my account? What's the price of my house? What kind of pension awaits me in the future? But here's a question my mentor once asked me. What will you do when money loses its power? Think about it, friends. Is there anything in your life that won't lose value in any crisis? Do you have that inner foundation that remains unshakable, even if today's market turns upside down? This is where the real conversation about inflation resilience begins. Have you seen how some people lose everything overnight, yet find the strength to rise again, while others, having it all, just panic and hide from their problems? It's not about numbers, it's about that inner core, that personal philosophy, those principles that allow you not just to survive the storm, but to come out of it stronger and wiser. I was once among those who waited. Maybe the government will make the economy stable, maybe prices will go down, maybe someone will take care of my money. But there comes a moment, and everyone faces it sooner or later, when you realize no one is coming, and no one but you will protect your capital from devaluation. It's in moments like these that real transformation begins. Let me ask you a few simple but very uncomfortable questions. Answer honestly to yourself, not to me. What gives you peace of mind? The number in your bank account or the feeling that you can handle any storm? What will happen to your future if inflation eats up half your savings tomorrow? How do you react when everything around you is getting more expensive? Do you look for someone to blame, or do you start building a new financial foundation? Has there been a moment in your life when you realized it was time to take responsibility for your own money, your own well-being, your own family? I'm not asking these questions to scare you. No, my goal is to spark an awareness that can turn your life around. That's how I was awakened once. You can't imagine how many people stop at the first sign of anxiety. Everything's getting more expensive. Everything's bad. They spend years looking for excuses, politics, the economy, the government, injustice. Meanwhile, life goes on, and time isn't working in our favor. I was once in that place myself, sitting in the evenings, resenting that the world wasn't the way I wanted. But one day, sitting there with an empty wallet, I heard a phrase from my mentor that changed everything. Your financial future begins the moment you stop waiting and start acting. Friends, you can't change the weather on the financial market. You can't stop inflation with a wave of your hand. But you can always change your reactions, your decisions, your actions. That's what real inflation resilience is about. It starts with a simple realization. I am the main investor in my own life, and only I determine what my capital will be filled with tomorrow. And you know what scares people the most? Realizing that control is in their hands. Yes, exactly, because with that comes responsibility and therefore power. It doesn't matter how much you have in your account today. What matters is what decisions you make every day. Let's remember my story. At 25, I had a pile of debt, a young family, and no prospects at all. I was on the brink of bankruptcy and had no idea what was next. But it was then that I learned the most important lesson. It's not those who have more who survive, but those who are more flexible, responsible, and able to think in terms of long-term value. That's when I realized that even when the dollar depreciates, your true capital is inside you. So I ask you again, what is your peace of mind based on today? On the exchange rate or on your skills and strategies? Are you preparing for the storm or just hoping it will pass you by? Are you building your capital so it can withstand Not just this wave of inflation, but the next one as well? In this video, we're not just going to talk about financial literacy. I'll show you 3 principles that I've personally tested in the toughest years of my life. They work both in times of growth and in times of decline, regardless of political news or market indexes. Together, we'll look at why responsibility is your main financial shield, why flexibility and the willingness to change strategies are not about weakness, but about survival, and why the best investments aren't bank deposits, but those values that can't be devalued by inflation. Stay with me, because ahead lies the real path to financial independence, which doesn't start with your wallet, but with your choices. Are you ready to start this journey? I was at rock bottom, but that's exactly where I began building my wealth. And if you now feel the pressure of inflation, instability, fear for tomorrow, believe me, you're already standing on the threshold of the greatest changes in your financial life. Only you can decide whether you'll be the one who complains about circumstances or the one who makes their own rules even in the middle of a storm. Let's find together the answers and steps that will protect and multiply your opportunities, no matter what the dollar is worth today. I want you to do one simple thing right now. Take an honest look at your life. What was your first reaction when prices suddenly shot up? When the money in your account started melting away faster than snow in the sun? Did you blame politicians, banks, the news, your neighbors, or maybe even luck? Or maybe, just like I once did, you thought, well, what can I do when everything around me is against me? That's natural. Almost everyone feels tempted to shift the blame onto someone or something else. But here's what I realized after many years. Right at that moment when you feel powerless, you either lose everything or you find your true strength. Friends, I was standing in line at the ATM, watching the currency rates on the display change, listening to people behind me grumble, everything's lost, nothing can save us now. And then it hit me, this is how most people think. But how do the minority think, the ones who survive and grow stronger? Here's the key. They take responsibility. Not for the world economy, not for the decisions of politicians, but for their own small but real financial world. It was right then in that line that I first felt what it means to take power into your own hands. That became my first step toward resilience, one that no inflation could break anymore. Now, a question for you. How many times have you waited for someone else to solve your financial problems? How many times have you thought, when things get easier, then I'll start taking action? But what if that easier never comes? What if the storm is the new reality? What then? I remember my mentor once said to me, Jim, your financial situation isn't a result of politics or the weather. It's a result of your daily decisions. Back then, I was ready to argue, to get offended, to blame the whole world. But only when I admitted that my fate was in my own hands did everything start to change. Was I scared? Absolutely. But that honesty gave me a new beginning. Let me guide you through a mini exercise. Imagine you wake up in the morning, open the news, and learn that everything you've saved has lost half its value. What's your first reaction? Panic? Anger? Now go deeper. What will you do today so that this never becomes a catastrophe for you again? Right now, you're choosing. Will you stay in the role of the victim, or will you become the author of your own capital? I'm not saying this to judge anyone. For years, I lived with the feeling that others were making all the decisions for me. I remember sitting in a small apartment counting pennies and thinking, when will someone come and tell me how to live? But no one came. And I understood the main thing. Waiting for help means losing years, opportunities, confidence. Right now you might be protesting, but the world really is complicated. I don't control inflation. True, you don't control the dollar rate or oil prices, but you do control your strategy. You control how you respond to changes. You choose whether to save money or spend it emotionally. You choose whether to learn new things or stick to old habits that don't work anymore. You choose whether to keep a financial journal or live on autopilot, hoping for luck. I used to think that rich people were just lucky, that they always had a cushion, that someone always helped them. But over time, talking to those who had survived recessions, hyperinflation, and bankruptcies, I saw they all thought differently. They didn't wait for outside change, they changed themselves. More than one person I know started during economic storms with this question: what can I change in myself, in my habits, in my mindset so I can survive and then grow? They took responsibility and became stronger. Now imagine 2 pictures. The first, you're sitting in the dark watching your savings melt away, blaming everyone around you. The second, you get up and say to yourself, from this day on, I don't control the world economy, but I do control my actions. I start keeping a budget. I choose my expenses wisely. I learn how to protect what I have. I look for new income opportunities even when it's scary. You have no idea what inner strength comes with that decision. That's how I once tasted true financial freedom for the first time. Why is it so hard to take this responsibility? Because it means admitting that many of our problems aren't just circumstances, but the results of our decisions from yesterday. But it's in that honesty that your future resilience is hidden. Don't be ashamed to admit your mistakes. A mistake isn't a defeat if it becomes a lesson. Friends, all the biggest changes in my life began when I told myself, yes, I fell short, yes, I overspent, yes, I trusted the wrong people, but from this moment on, I choose how to live. Responsibility isn't a burden, it's the key to independence. It's your armor in times of inflation, crisis, and uncertainty. It's what allows you not to panic when others are losing their heads. As my mentor said, you can't stop the wind, but you can adjust your sails. And that's the essence of the first major financial principle. And one more question. Are you ready to stop being a spectator in your own financial story? Are you ready to step on stage and say to yourself, I am responsible for my prosperity, for my decisions, for my protection, and for my victories? Believe me, this is the hardest and most valuable decision in life, because this is where real inflation resilience begins. Don't rush to answer. Feel it inside. Ask yourself today a simple but honest question. What did I do yesterday to be a little more financially resilient today? And if the answer doesn't satisfy you, that's great. It's not a defeat, but a starting point for real change. Very soon, closer to the end of the video, I'll give you a simple exercise for daily financial responsibility checkups. But for now, remember, every time you take responsibility, you're building that bridge that will carry you across even the stormiest financial river. Stay with me, because next we'll talk about flexibility, the second principle that turns a storm into a new beginning. But that's not all. There was a time when I was convinced that stability was the most important thing. A steady job, familiar routines, a clear path. I was just like most people, seeking comfort in the things I knew. But do you know what happened to me when the economy crashed? I lost everything I'd relied on. For the first time, I was left without an income, without guarantees, with a small child in my arms. And it was then, sitting in silence at the kitchen table, that I truly realized for the first time, in life, there is no such thing as real stability. Everything that seems solid can change overnight. But there's something more important than stability. It's your ability to change with the world. Let's be honest. How often do you find yourself thinking today, I would do everything if only things around me were a little calmer? But what if it never gets calmer? What if tomorrow another market collapses, another industry disappears, another technology eats up a familiar job? Are you ready? Are you flexible? Do you know how to look for new opportunities when the old ones close? I didn't know either. I wasn't taught that in school. No one talked about it at work. But when life forced me to face reality, I understood. It's not the strongest who survive, but the most adaptable. Not the one who has the most, but the one who can let go of the past and see a new path when it feels like every road is blocked. Imagine, you're sitting at home, there's a storm outside, rain is pouring down on everything. What do? Do you complain about the weather? Wait for the sun to come out? Or do you look for a new road, a new umbrella, a new home? Life is like the sea, and sometimes a storm is inevitable. But only the captain who isn't afraid to change course avoids sinking in the storm. Many times I was the one who waited for the storm to pass on its own. But my greatest breakthroughs happened when I dared to act despite fear, despite uncertainty, despite the golden past. Let me share with you a story that changed my view on flexibility. It was the late 1950s. I lost the job I relied on. The business closed. Debts grew. My family was waiting for answers. For months, I hoped the market would bounce back, that things would go back to how they were. But the longer I waited, the deeper I sank into a swamp of fear and hopelessness. Until one morning, I sat down at the table with a blank sheet of paper and wrote, I can't change yesterday, but I can change myself today. That was my second birth. I started learning. New books, new connections, new skills. Every day, a small step toward the unknown. And you know what? That's when the opportunities I'd only dreamed of before started to appear in my life. Now, a question for you, friends. How do you react to change? Do you resist, get angry, long for the lost past? Or are you ready to look ahead, even when the road is unclear? Let's be honest with ourselves right now. The world is changing, and I am changing with it. Not for someone else, for yourself, for your family, for your future. Think about it. What's one new skill you could learn today that would protect your income from inflation? What's one new decision that would help you stop fearing instability? Maybe it's a new profession, an online course, a side business, changing your approach to spending or investing. Maybe it's simply the willingness to try something new, even if it feels scary or uncomfortable. In one of the toughest crises in the U.S., when even the biggest companies' incomes were being eaten up by inflation, one of my students, an ordinary manager, instead of waiting to be laid off, learned related professions, started looking for clients in new fields, and opened a small business that eventually lifted him to another level. He could have, like everyone else, waited and hoped, but he chose flexibility, and that became his advantage when everyone else was losing out. Metaphorically speaking, every crisis is a city where the doors are constantly closing. But if you're flexible, you always have the key to new doors. Your brain is a tool for finding solutions, not excuses. When one path closes, another opens, but only for those who aren't afraid to try. Now, as you're listening to these words, ask yourself, what habit, thought, or fear can I change today so that tomorrow I'm more resilient to any financial storm? Friends, flexibility isn't just about money or career. It's about relationships, about health, about time. Are you ready to learn? Ready to let go of what no longer works? Ready to build something new, even if you have to start from scratch? I remember how I once had to throw away an entire box of old ideas about how things should be. At first, it's painful to leave behind what you're used to. But then freedom comes, and suddenly you see the world not through the lens of fear, but as a field of new possibilities. Why don't most people grow during a crisis? Because they cling to the past, to the familiar scenario. But true growth begins where you're willing to change. Let's think together right now. Do you have a backup plan? Do you have a new strategy today in case tomorrow's world gets even more unpredictable? Are you ready to try something that once seemed impossible? Don't be afraid to be a beginner. It's beginners, those who aren't afraid to learn and try, who win in a changing world. My mentor used to say, the main risk isn't that you'll try something new and lose. The main risk is that you'll stay where there's no more life. I believe that everyone can find flexibility within themselves. Even if you feel like you've lost everything, you still have your main advantage, the ability to change yourself, your approach, your strategies. And you know what can't be bought with money? The ability to adapt. It has to be developed. That's your real insurance against inflation and instability. Don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to be the one who takes the first step into a new reality. Remember, flexibility isn't about running away from difficulties. It's about being able to turn your ship around when everyone else is just watching the waves crash over their old home. That's what turns a crisis into the beginning of new growth. Stay with me, because very soon I'll share a practice that will help you feel stronger in any storm. And for now, remember, the economic storm comes to everyone, but not everyone is ready to come out of it as a winner. The next principle is investing in values that can't be eroded by inflation. But before we get to that, pause for a moment and think, what can I make more flexible in myself today? Because that's what will give you the inner stability tomorrow that no economic disaster can break. I want you to take an honest look at your financial decisions over the past few years. What have you been saving? What have you invested in? What have you spent money on? What was your logic when everything around you was getting more expensive and values were swinging like a boat in a storm? Tell me honestly, haven't you ever wanted to just hide what you had left under the mattress? Or maybe you wanted to cling to every devaluing bill, holding on to it like a lifeline. I've been down that road myself, from the fear of losing my last bit to the understanding that real capital isn't where most people look for it. Friends, there was a time when I was standing at the counter counting the change I got for another jar of coffee. Prices had doubled, and the cash in my wallet was disappearing before my eyes. In that moment, every part of me was screaming, "You need to save. You have to hold on to something." But that was exactly when something inside me changed. I remembered my mentor's words, "Jim, the truly rich person isn't the one who has money, but the one who has value. Money is just the shadow of real strength." It was like a cold shower. I started asking myself, what is my real value? What will stay with me, even if my bank account hits zero? Look at your life. Are you accumulating money, or are you investing in yourself, in skills, knowledge, relationships, health? Are you building assets that work for you regardless of the dollar exchange rate? Or are you just trying not to lose what you already have? Remember how quickly everything that lacks deep meaning can disappear. A bank can close, investments can burn up, things can lose value. But knowledge, experience, strong relationships, character, reputation, creativity, inner resilience, none of these can be devalued by inflation. I remember a story from my own life. The first time I received a serious fee, I wanted to spend it on something tangible. Buy a car, a nice suit, show the world that I was no longer that poor kid from Idaho. But my mentor asked me, what will bring you more value in a year, in 10 years, in your whole life? I invested in books, in seminars, in trips where I met people who lived the way I wanted to live. It was exactly those investments that brought me dividends I never even dreamed of in my youth. Because money can be lost overnight, but experience, knowledge, new ideas, they stay with you forever. Now here's a question for you. What have you invested in over the past year that will keep bringing value even in times of inflation? What is your main investment fear or growth? Do you spend money just to feel calmer for a day, or do you invest in what will give you confidence for years? I've often met people who, in a crisis, would stockpile food, gold, foreign currency, hoping to ride out the storm. But those who invested in skills, new income streams, health, relationships with forward-thinking people, those were the ones who came out as winners after the storm. We often forget the most valuable things in the world can't be measured in dollars or euros. Do you have values in your life that can't be bought and can't be lost with the next devaluation? I'm not asking this to be dramatic, but for an honest conversation. Do you have a kind of capital that grows every year, even when everything else is devaluing? Think about it. Who's around you? What are your habits? Do you have a mentor? Do you keep a journal where you record ideas, thoughts, mistakes, and victories? What does your portfolio of values look like? What's in first place? Let me tell you another story. One of my entrepreneur friends, when the whole country was freezing their assets, didn't buy new currency or expensive things. He invested in his team, taught his employees new skills, expanded his product line, and went online. Everyone laughed at him. Who needs these ideas when everything's falling apart? But 2 years later, his business became the leader in the region, and his employees became loyal partners. That's what it means to invest in value that outlives any money. And here's another deep metaphor. Imagine a gardener who plants a new tree every year. Someone might laugh, why do you need those trees? They don't bear fruit right away. But over time, that gardener survives every drought, every storm, every bout of inflation. Because his wealth isn't in the fruit he can pick today, but in the garden itself, which grows stronger every year. I want each of you to think about this. What trees are you planting in your life right now? Are you building that garden that will outlast any crisis? Maybe it's new knowledge, a book you've read, a skill you've learned, an online course you've completed. Maybe it's health, a new habit that strengthens your body and mind. Maybe it's relationships built not on profit, but on genuine support. Maybe it's your own business or the work you love. Anything that grows in value over the years is your best financial protection. Friends, don't let the fear of devaluation keep you passive. It's in the hardest times that you should sow, because those are the times when your growth will be the strongest. There have been periods in my life when I was left with almost nothing in my account, but I never had zero when it came to plans, ideas, relationships, or inner resilience. That's what a real asset is. It's what helps you not just survive, but grow when others are giving up. Now let me ask you one more question. If all your material possessions disappeared tomorrow, what would you have left? What could you start over with? What will you be proud of in 10 years, regardless of the market, inflation, or the news? That's what we'll be thinking about in the practical part coming up soon. I'll give you a specific exercise for creating your own personal portfolio of values. But before that, let me remind you, those who reap the greatest rewards are the ones who think not only about today's win, but about tomorrow's harvest. Remember, money can be lost, but the values you cultivate inside and around yourself cannot be devalued by any inflation. Your main task is to build what no crisis can steal. Build, invest, nurture, and then even the fiercest storm will be just a test, not a catastrophe. To be continued. And very soon, the practical part that will help you not only preserve, but also multiply the real value in your life. Don't go anywhere, because the most interesting part is just beginning. Now it's time for some interaction. Right here, friends. You move from being just a listener to becoming a co-author of your own story. Remember, real change doesn't start when you're simply listening, but when you honestly answer yourself, where am I right now? And where do I want to go next? I invite you not just to think, but to really live these questions as you go. Don't pause the video. Don't search for perfect answers. Just give yourself an honest rating from 1 to 10. On this scale, 1 means I never apply this principle, while 10 means this is my personal standard. I act this way always, even in a storm. Ready? Let's begin. First question, how deeply are you taking responsibility for your finances right now? Think. Are you shifting blame onto external circumstances? Are you really ready to say, everything is in my hands? If it's a 1, you're still waiting for a magic pill. If it's a 10, you don't look for excuses, you look for a way. Feel this scale, it's like a thermometer for your inner strength. Second question, how flexibly do you respond to changes in the world? Are you ready to change approaches and habits, even if it scares you? Do you try new things when the old ways no longer work? 1 is when you're frozen in the past. 10 is when you build a new bridge through uncertainty every day. Listen inside yourself, what's your answer? Third question, are you investing in long-term value? Ask yourself, are my knowledge, relationships, and skills growing even when the exchange rate falls? 1 means you only invest in quick fixes. 10 means you're building capital that no storm can devalue. Honestly, where are you right now? Fourth question, how well can you let go of the fear of loss and act with faith in your own growth? Fear holds on to yesterday while faith gives wings to the future. 1 means you cling to the past. 10 means every time you choose growth over fear. And finally, the fifth question, how regularly do you review and analyze your financial decisions? Do you learn from them or just repeat the same steps? 1 is acting blindly. 10 is asking yourself every evening, what did I do right? What can I improve tomorrow? This isn't just about control. This is your personal will for yourself. Remember your answers. These aren't grades, but your starting point, your coordinates on the map of change. Don't be discouraged if your numbers are low for now. This is just a hint about where to invest your energy next. Come back to these questions after the video. Give yourself even more time for deep reflection. Maybe today is the day you start building your true inner financial foundation. And if these questions touched on something important, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and share your answers or discoveries. Every thought you share is another step on your journey to resilience. Your story is being written right now. And you know, friends, in closing, I'll say just one thing. No inflation can ever devalue your principles, your flexibility, your belief in your own ability to act. In a world where everything is temporary, true resilience isn't born in the bank, it's born within you. Your strength isn't about how much you have in your account today, but about how much you can create, even if you lose everything tomorrow. Wealth isn't a number, it's the ability to start from scratch and grow an entire garden of values, knowledge, and connections all over again. Remember, the strongest have always been those who weren't afraid to start with a blank page, who chose to act even when the whole world waited and feared. Don't let any storm define who you become. Your story is just beginning, and today is the perfect day to start writing it anew.